Well, before leaving office, a Mississippi governor decides to pardon several prison inmates, but not just any inmates, people convicted of murder.
And joining us live in studio to talk more about this case is Defense Attorney John Patrick Dolan. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning indeed.
Yeah, well, can you tell us a little bit more about this case?
Well, it was a big story back at the end of January as Haley Barbour went out of office as the governor of Mississippi. He pardoned 216 people, 4 of which had worked in the governor's mansion and were convicted of murder. Big uproar, as you can imagine. Many of the sentences were commuted, but these were pardons as to people that had committed murder. Big lawsuit from the Attorney General, who happens to be a political opponent of Haley Barbour. The Supreme Court in Mississippi last week handed down a ruling that essentially said, look, this is basic civics. You know, the governor has the authority to grant pardons. It's part of the executive branch authority and powers. And so these people are pardoned, and actually those people that have not been released because they were waiting for this ruling will be released this week. So the conclusion is the governor can pardon, just as the president can pardon individuals, usually as they go out of office, because it's politically very unsound for most governors and presidents.
Wow.
Wow. Well, you'd want to wonder why he would pardon these people, and that's quite a number there.
Redemption and rehabilitation is the reason that was given.
Well, speaking of murder, let's talk about Stephanie Lazarus, the former LA cop convicted of killing her lover's wife more than 20 years ago?
She was going out with another LAPD officer who happened to be her college sweetheart. He ended up marrying someone else, and that someone else was killed. Her name was Sherry Rasmussen. Cold case, 26 years old, DNA evidence that was preserved linked Lazarus to this case, and last week she was convicted and she will be sentenced on May 4th. She faces 27 to life. It's a very difficult situation for all the parties involved, and of course sort of a stain on the reputation of LAPD. But at least eventually they got it right, and that's what the articles are talking about.
Well, we've heard quite a bit about the case involving the Desperate Housewives actress who was suing, and now there are some new developments. Tell us about that.
Well, Nicolette Sheraton is suing because she got whacked on the back of the head, much like Gibbs does to DiNozzo in NCIS. She found that distasteful, complained about it, and eventually got fired. So there's a lawsuit, and the lawsuit is proceeding in Los Angeles. Last week, an interesting development, George Perkins, the executive director, mentioned that this weekend, one of the individuals on the show was going to be killed unexpectedly. That actually happened this weekend, and it caused a big stir. In the greater scheme of things, no big deal, but it is interesting that that came out before. And a couple of the jurors, by the way, were shocked because they were Desperate Housewives fans.
Wow, I love that show, but now with my new sleep schedule, I can't watch it anymore, so I'm totally clueless. But that's exciting stuff, and I'm sure we'll be hearing much more about that case.
Oh, yes.
That's interesting because if you're an actor in a show, you know, it's whatever the writer decides. But I guess you could sue if your actor, the person you're playing is killed.
Well, and her lawsuit was that they actually touched her, committed a battery. Frankly, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but you have the right to go and sue if somebody puts their hands on you, and that's what happened with Nicolette Sheraton.
Wow.
Well,
Amazing.
John, thank you so much for joining us today. And you can always contact John Patrick Dolan at the number that you see on the screen right there. Actually, the website, dolanlawoffices.com, and John can answer all of your legal questions. Thank you again for joining us, John.